All righty, guys, we are back talking fun topics here. Look, we can't have Derek on the show without, going away from the typical offseason stuff. We're going to have some fun what ifs, some scenarios of the past, a couple that I came up with, a couple that Jay came up with. But I think you guys know me well enough to know that this first one is obviously all me because I don't care for the Pro Bowl players. I don't care for the All-Pro players. We want the diamonds in the rough players. So Derek, I want to ask you one former non-Pro Bowl player from the Colts that you can add to the current team. I didn't add this stipulation I told you, but if you are taking a player who's not a Pro Bowler, like it can't be like, oh, Andre Johnson didn't make a Pro Bowl with the Colts. We're taking prime Andre Johnson. Like, sure. I mean, like a guy who, like, if you want to take him with the Colts, you can, but you get Andre Johnson with the Colts if you want to go with that there for this scenario.
Hakeem Nicks with the Colts.
Yes. Yeah, no, I'm going to Darius Hayward-Bay with anybody. Yeah, no, right. I won't go down that road. It's a great question. And there were actually some that I was like, oh, I would take him. And then I looked and I was like, he made a Pro Bowl? Wow.
Jack Doyle. Doyle for me. I forgot all about Doyle's and I forgot all about Joseph Adai's. I forgot that he made the one Pro Bowl. Oh, I was so excited about that one.
Yes, I looked up exactly the two that I looked up.
I looked up Adai before that.
Yeah. So I actually went a little bit of a different route. I think when you're looking, we were just talking about defensive secondary and having a veteran presence. And I actually didn't look if this guy made the Pro Bowl or not, but he popped into my head about an hour ago when I was talking with Jake again. I always kind of liked Kelvin Hayden.
Did he make the Pro Bowl? I doubt it, at least not with the Colts. Yeah. That's a Super Bowl hero.
Yeah. A play that is completely overshadowed, right? Because how many franchises can really say that their most prominent win and most memorable play both came in a non-Super Bowl win? And I think the Colts can do that because it's the Jackson interception, and the AFC Championship game is the biggest win in Colts history. The Bears Super Bowl was almost like a coronation. It was an afterthought. That was a guarantee that was going to happen. Mm-hmm. But Hayden had the clinching play in what was, just a god-awful game. Not for anybody in Indianapolis, obviously, but not a rainy, sloppy, messy night in Miami. So Hayden came to mind. The other one for me, and this is because the Colts running back depth is a little bit in question, and this guy had a lot of injury issues, but I think he did kind of a lot of. I just enjoyed watching him play. I liked his attitude, and he did a lot of things well. Was Ahmad Bradshaw was another guy that I thought of.
Yes,
nice.
That's a good one.
Not a Pro Bowl player, but could make big plays at times and fit in well. He was a really effective player when he was healthy. He just had basically 2 bad feet, and that ultimately was a big issue for him. But Hayden and Ahmad Bradshaw were the two, relatively recent ones that came into mind for me.
I'm in love with those answers.
Yeah, the two recent guys I came up with. And these are very recent because, again, I've mostly been around the Colts since like 2017. But the first one was Khari Willis, really popped into my head.
Okay.
Just to have that kind of presence back there. I know he's not the most rangy guy, but just that presence. And then Julian Blackman could go back to free safety. And we could be good back there at safety, or better at safety. But the other one is just the craziest guy to never make a Pro Bowl. And look, I know the Colts are fine at this position, but I'll just take him and we'll figure it out. And that's Anthony Costanzo. Just bring him back. Bring back prime Anthony Costanzo. We'll figure out. We'll put Braden Smith back at guard. We'll put Ryman at right tackle. Whatever. We'll figure it out. Bring back Costanzo. Somehow never made a Pro Bowl in his NFL
crazy.
Career.
It's really kind of a travesty that he never made a Pro. I don't even know how that's possible. I
mean, now Dallas Clark made a Pro Bowl, but it almost seems like that. Like routinely one of the best guys at his position, but there was always like 5 other guys a little bit better.
Yeah. Fair.
Clark was with Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates, and all that. But yeah, Costanzo was really dependable, and the Colts found that out the hard way after he retired. For me, I'm going with the era that Derek was talking about. Again, this guy would probably actually complement the current Colts backfield really well. I'm going Dominic Rhodes. Ooh. I mean, they need a hero. I mean, that guy, he could catch the ball like no other. He was a really good kickoff returner as well. If I remember correctly, he was pretty decent in pass protection. So, I mean, the guy could run the ball. He ran for 1,000 yards when Edgerrin James got hurt. So that's a guy who easily could be your RB2, and we wouldn't have to say, like, is Trey Sermon good enough? What happens with Evan Hull and Tyler Goodson? Like Jonathan Taylor and Dominic Rhodes, that would be really fun. Yeah. And then Derek, Zach and I did something somewhat similar recently, but I said plugging in Stephon Gilmore to this current corner room would be really good. Like the year the Colts had him, not necessarily like 34-year-old Gilmore now or however old he is, but like the year 2022 Gilmore in this group, I think would be really good.
Yeah, one of the few bright spots. Dom Rhodes, one of my favorite overlooked plays in Colts history. 2008, the year the Steelers won the Super Bowl. Colts, who never beat the Steelers, went to Heinz Field and won that game, and it was clinched on a long screen pass from Manning to Rhodes. Yeah, that 2008. Remember, they started 3-4. Manning had the bursa sack. We found out what a bursa sack was.
Right. Yep.
And they won 9 straight to end that season, and one of the 9 straight was at Heinz Field against the Steelers. That was a really fun team that ultimately ran into Seifries and Sproles and the 8-8 Chargers in the wild card round in a game that we won't rehash on.
I'm pretty sure the Colts only just last year beat the Steelers for the first time since then too. So that was cool.
Yeah, it had been a while.
Billy Volek, never face Billy Volek again. That's the Colt killer right there. Is Billy Volek at quarterback?
We're gonna push this episode long, Zach. Let's do our last one here.
All right. So one more question before we get out of here for the day is, if you could change one Indy era moment to a different result. So I mean, you could pick game if you want. You could pick individual moment within a game that obviously would have an effect on the result. Whatever you want to change from any of the Indy era, Derek. What are you going back in time and changing and making things better for all of us?
But remember the caveat, it can't be Colts Saints Super Bowl.
Yes. Sorry, no Colts Saints Super Bowl. That's too obvious. We would all change 20 plays.
If you gave me the choice, I would not take the basket onside kick. The moment that flipped that game was Garcon dropping a sure touchdown pass. It was 17-3. It would have been 17-3 at that point. Colts win that game by 2 touchdowns easy.
Mm-hmm.
We'll leave 2009 and 2009. 2007, Dwight Freeney's season-ending Liz Frank injury. I think it happened in a mid-season game in San Diego where Adam Vinatieri actually missed a 24-yard field goal that would have put the Colts ahead. Manning threw 6 interceptions, if you guys remember that game.
Cromartie had 4.
I had kind of teased this. 2007, to me and like 4 other people on Colts Twitter believe this. The 2007 Colts, fully healthy, were their best team. Bob Sanders was the DPOY that year. And Freeney was having a great year too. I think they were number 3 in total defense that year. And the other thing, I know people argue 05. The division in 07 was much better than it was in 05. 05 had the Texans and the Titans were 2 of the worst teams in the league. I think they had 2 and 4 wins. In 07, every team in the division had an 8-8 or better record. The Colts, 3 losses that year were a 10-point lead that they lost at home in the fourth quarter to the 16-0 Patriots, that San Diego Chargers game where Vinatieri missed an under 30-yard field goal, and a laydown game against the Titans in week 17. Those are their 3 losses that year. And they're completely overshadowed because the Patriots had an historic 16-0 team. So the result that I would change is the Freeney injury, because I did think that zapped them a little bit. But ultimately, Zach mentioned Billy effing Volek, right? Last game at the RCA Dome, divisional, Colts were 10-point favorites. They had 0 business losing that game.
Drew Bennett.
Yeah.
Remember, they kicked like 2 or 3 onside kicks in that game too, the Titans did.
No, I mean, the Tomlinson injury, Tomlinson injury happened in that game. Rivers got hurt in that game. Gates got hurt in that game. And still, like, the B team for the Chargers ended up beating them. And I think in hindsight, the Patriots were kind of running on fumes in the postseason. Remember, they didn't particularly play well in the divisional or the championship game against the Chargers. And I think that 07 Colts team, they would have had to go to New England, which is tough to do in an AFC championship game. But I think they could have beaten the Giants. And that's a result that I would change. I'm always banging my fist on the table about that, but I think the 07 team was the best team. But yes, really with the caveat of 09, 09 changes a lot of things. You'll never convince me otherwise that the Colts weren't the better team. They should not have lost that game. And of course they did, because everything went wrong at the end of that first half sequence and the start of the second half. And it just changed the dynamics of things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so funny because when you think of the Peyton Manning era, there are so many almost moments, there's missed kicks, there's unlucky moments, there's defense blowing this, whatever, like Peyton throwing a pick, or, whatever it is. Like if you could change the Super Bowl, you could even change the interception in the Super Bowl to Tracy Porter. Like you could change so many things in this. And I think the most obvious one that comes to mind, obviously, is the shoelace tackle against the Steelers.
Yeah.
I
Nick
mean,
Harper. Yeah.
I mean,
Nick
just
Harper's
go Eddie.
wife stabbing him the night before.
Yep.
Just had to happen.
It's just like go anywhere else, like
Mm-hmm.
just keep running to the sideline, like whatever. And the Colts, potentially in the Super Bowl that year too. So there's just so many moments to change. I think personally for me though, just from my time covering the Colts, because I don't want to infringe on your guys' era of watching the Colts, just because I wasn't a Colts fan then, but just from my time covering the Colts, almost anything about that Colts Bills playoff game in 2020 with Phillip Rivers.
Yeah.
I mean, the missed short kick, the offsides penalty by Kemoko Toure before halftime. I believe there was a throw out the back of the end zone on a 4th down to Michael Pittman Jr. that barely went over his hands. I mean, there's just
the toss play at the goal line. Remember,
the
right?
toss
Calling
play
the toss
at the
play
goal
at the
line.
goal
Yeah,
line.
there's
Like, what are you doing?
So many moments, and the Colts lost by 3 to the 2 seed. It would have been wouldn't that have been the first 7 seed to beat a 2 seed since we've brought the 7 seed in?
That was the first year, of the 7th seed, I think, right?
Yeah. And they took the Bills to the wire, and Josh Allen was playing well. Like Josh Allen's a great playoff quarterback. The Colts took him to the wire, and I'm not saying they go to the Super Bowl that year by any means, but that Colts team had it. They had some juice, man. They had some serious juice, and I think they could have won. I mean, they could have been in the championship game that year, in the AFC championship game that year.
That was the year the Bengals went, and it wasn't a particularly strong AFC season.
No.
But I'm going to go with one, and I'll have to do some explaining with it too. My moment I would change is back in 2006, Washington versus Colts. Philip Daniels just simply sacking Peyton Manning like a normal human being.
It's always Washington. Always Washington.
Causing the neck injury that a few seasons later would eventually, cause the entire derailment of that whole era. I don't regret a single second of the Andrew Luck era. I wish things would have gone differently. That's a whole nother thing though. But, Peyton Manning never having that neck injury that caused him to miss that season, that caused the 2-14 season, and him just simply being wrapped up by the shoulders and brought down or something, that neck injury never happening. You don't know how differently things could have been. Cause I mean, Peyton, there were times where he didn't look 100% after that leading up to the season ending neck injury. So who knows what kind of chain of events that could have set off. And a lot of people do argue, look at what Peyton did with the Broncos. The Colts would have won those Super Bowls and everything. No, because the Broncos had a generational defense while Peyton was doing all those things. But, I mean, maybe they would have gotten another one out of it. They could have had another Super Bowl win in that window in between, when they actually won the Super Bowl against the Bears and then when, let's say 2014 or so, about the time Peyton was finally done. But yeah, I think just simply making that a normal sack would have changed a lot of things.
I do like Zach's answer, though. I mean, if I'm being honest, the only scenario that I think guarantees a Super Bowl is the Harper play, because the league sucked that year, guys. Like Jake Plummer's Broncos, who was standing in their way? That off-brand Seahawks team that nobody remembers or cares about. The 05, the Colts were so clearly the best team in the league that year in 05. Whereas 07, you had Romo's Cowboys and Favre and the Packers were really good. And obviously the Patriots. I mean, you had a lot of good teams that year. But yeah, there's something about the Colts history, particularly that, what if, and all franchises have what ifs, but I feel like the Colts Peyton era specifically has a whole mess of those moments.
Yeah. And I'll hit this one really quick, because I know we got to get out of here in a second, but the biggest what if for a lot of people, if you're really using hindsight bias, and I'll ask you guys, because you guys both have been Colts fans through all this, the choice on moving on from Peyton Manning to go to Andrew Luck, using all the hindsight bias that you can right now, do you trade that first overall pick for a ton of picks and just one last ride with Peyton and maybe win a Super Bowl or two, or do you still do the same thing the Colts did?
I'll give my quick answer before letting Derek explain his, but I say no. The Colts do it all the same. Not necessarily everything after drafting Andrew, but
get rid of Grigson maybe a little earlier.
I would have done the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was defensible and they made the right decision at the time. But if you're offering me the gift of hindsight and you're telling me 3.5 more all-pro MVP level seasons from Peyton Manning plus a draft pick package for number one for a generational level quarterback, that I'm taking the latter. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Jake's right about the Broncos defense and the scenarios, and there's no guarantee that they would have replicated that here, but you'd have 3.5 MVP level seasons with Manning, and I'll leave the rest up to, I'll take my chances with that.
It is enticing for sure. It's not like a layup, but yeah.
I mean, look, the 2014 Colts, even with all the issues building teams with a young quarterback and Andrew Luck, they still went to the AFC Championship game, right? Wasn't that the 2014? So, like,
yeah.
Who knows? I think that's all like a huge what if there, obviously. But you guys let us know in the comment section what are your biggest what if moments, not only from the Peyton era, but you can do from the Ballard era too. Like, what if they don't let Bobby Okereke walk? Is their linebacker group feeling a lot better right now? Mm-hmm. You know, what if they draft AJ Brown over Rock Ya-Sin? Or you guys can do all your what ifs that you want as well in the comment section. Please let us know.